In the last video, I'm just watching it back now, but when I got to 3 minutes, I talked about how the government was making housing worse. And then I realized that I've switched topics onto something different. I've got quite a lot of things to talk about, and I kind of want to explain myself. The reason why the government had made it worse is why because they'd made it illegal for a property that it was a living room and a one bedroom and a bathroom. I was going to put the kitchen in the living room and have it as a one bedroom with a sort of on kitchen, dining, living room area. And but yeah, technically the council made it worse because they said that that property was actually too small to exist. Hence, it would have needed to be reattached to the other property. And they also had put a fine which I was supposed to pay on the property, even though I wasn't the one that did the divide. So on one hand, how was that going to help me? So what? You've told me that the property that I bought shouldn't exist, and not instead of like encouraging me to fix it and fix the problem and rejoin it, even though I really didn't like the tenant that was living in the back property. She was a very, very nasty person. Instead of trying to get me to fix the problem, the solution was to fine the person £20,000. It's just like, I've spent £60,000 on this. I mean, I know that's not much considering the house is worth about 120, 140. But yeah, it's worth 120, 140. And if I spend what 20,000 on dividing it, and then what the lease as well. Like I'm confused about the lease because I only own half of the property. And is the property really worth that much if there's two of these properties together? I mean technically, it really wasn't a good deal. And I went to the council to try and talk to them and ask them, and they didn't give me any help. They just said, go and figure it out. You have to get lawyers involved. And then I was just thinking, oh my God, lawyers. I mean, they charge £300 an hour. That this could be incredibly expensive. By the government making it legal to take 8 months to sort out things like this, there are problems. And my sister told me today that the property that she's planning on buying, it has a really nice summer house, which is kind of being used as a gym. But there is a problem because this summer house is actually built not on their land. So I think according to the charts, they own a certain amount of land, but there's a sort of outbound land that was probably not being used by anyone. So because it was just empty and not being maintained or used, I think the property kind of took down the fence and kind of went over into that land. And yeah, I don't know what the situation is, but that summer house needs to either be knocked down and rebuilt nearer to nearer in the right area, or they need to buy that land off the council, even though it's just like a small. But yeah, so there's problems going on with this. But by the council having, making it harder like this, like, are you not going to just fix the problem? Okay, this land isn't yours, but it wasn't being used, gives the council some money, and it can exist. Or are they literally going to force this? I don't know, but what do you do in these kind of disputes? Because the idea of going through lawyers to figure it out, Sophie said that she could lose this property that she's trying to buy. But I'm wondering, like, who's living in this house? Who's owning this house? Because I think if I was living in a house and there was a little bit of land that just was completely unused, and maybe I would stretch it over. It seems like a waste to have a patch. I've not seen it, but it seems like a waste for there to be such a land that exists that's not being used. So is it really wrong to stretch over into it? Probably not, especially not if this summer house is a really nice house. But is the council going to be fair? If you don't trust the council, if you don't trust that they're going to make good decisions, or if they're going to be very unreasonable and say, oh, this doesn't match up with whatever we agreed, so we're going to completely destroy it and not care about if you start feeling like this might be a possibility, then people aren't going to care about the council. They're going to be worried. And I think the people who sold this house have already gone through a difficulty where they've tried to sell the property to someone who needed to sell a property, and that's why I don't know the situation. My sister doesn't either, and she gives me very vague information. So, but there could be plenty of people who have tried to sell to someone, providing they sell their home, only their deal is fallen through, so this deal is fallen through. And then I know it can take a long time, but the longer it takes, the harder it is for it to go through, because there's all these complications. This one has to wait and wait and wait, and well, if this one waits and this one, and the house I think is empty right now. I mean, I don't know if they're renting it out or something, but you know, if you can rent it out a property for a long time, you know, if you can rent out a property for a high amount of money, you know, and make lots, you want it to be occupied so that you can make this money. And if you've got a gigantic mortgage and it does take 6 months or 8 months to sell a property, and you don't want to get a tenant in there in case they wreck the place or gut the place and destroy it, and therefore, you know, you want people in there to, you know, to make money out of it, but at the same time you know that it's coming at a risk, because if they do destroy it, you're going to have to pay for the costs, and the costs of renovating a property can be way higher than the rents. You know, I suppose these days costs are going higher and higher because builders are charging more, but yeah, I think the government can be making it far worse by saying things like, you know, this is not your land, or this is not allowed to exist, or these are the rules and the regulations. You know, sometimes the regulations and rules can be so restricted that it actually just prevents a sale from going through. And in one hand, I hope my sister's deal does gonna go through, because she does not have the money to go for it. But yeah, that makes me think, like, well, what happens about the, you know, the next people, or the people that are trying to sell? You know, if they've been trying to sell for over a year, is it, and if they have a mortgage to pay, you know, the mortgage companies do not benefit if there are loads of houses that are empty whilst this sort of long sales process goes on, and therefore the mortgage companies would want the sales process to speed up so that they can guarantee getting rent, and yeah, it's just such a dodgy market. The idea that you can buy a property to rent it out, only you find it's empty for 9 months because you can't sell. You know, if your mortgage is at £1,000 a month, well, what, do you have to use £9,000 just to have a house empty whilst you sell it on to someone else, so you don't lose huge amounts? You know, I guess I have a different perspective of money, because I've never really earned it. You know, £1,000 is a hell of a lot of money for me, and there's a lot of people that don't see it as a lot of money. But if they don't see it as a lot of money, why don't you see it as a lot of money? Like, have you just? I don't understand how jobs work. You know, I don't understand how most jobs work. What are most jobs? I just sit and play solitaire. Like, I don't know what most jobs are, and I know everything is expensive. Therefore, they probably do have money to spend. But I think when you look at it from a perspective when you don't understand how people can earn 40,000 a year, 50,000 a year. I don't understand how companies can make so much money when they're selling products that are fairly cheap. You know, all the products that I usually buy are usually very, very cheap, so I can't really work out how, you know, the middleman can get a huge amount of money when the products that I buy is very cheap. And I found my necklace, that one, I found it. It was in the cupboard. But yeah, just